Why Technocrats Fear Popular Movements. Interview with Patrick Wood.
You'll have a technocracy government where the government rules all the resources and tells you what you can and can't do, right down to the last little detail of your life. That means that if everybody owns nothing and they're happy, that means the people who are on the other side of that transaction own everything.
Yes.
Everything. And that is exactly where this thing is headed. That's what they're after. Owning and controlling all the resources of the world and denying you and I access to it. Transhumanism and technocracy are very closely related. I've often called them Siamese twins joined at the hip. When the Great Reset happens, at the same time, technology will be introduced into the human condition to prepare humans to live in that technocracy. And so artificial intelligence will be the government, if you will. They're scared to death, by the way, of the populist party right now, everywhere. We collectively, the populist movement, the movement is the greatest threat that technocrats have.
Patrick Wood is the editor-in-chief of Technocracy News and Trends. You can find them on the web at technocracy.news. Mr. Wood is a leading and critical expert on sustainable development, green economy, Agenda 21, the 2030 Agenda, and historic technocracy. He is the author of Technocracy Rising, the Trojan Horse of Global Transformation, and co-author of Trilaterals over Washington, Volumes 1 and 2, with the late Anthony C. Sutton. Wood remains a leading expert on the elitist Trilateral Commission, their policies and achievements in creating their self-proclaimed new international economic order. Patrick, it's wonderful to have you on today. Thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure. Glad to be here.
Well, I thought we might start with maybe a little stroll down dystopia lane, and you can paint a picture of, first of all, what is a technocracy? It seems like it's been around a while, the idea. Who are the technocrats, and what sort of future, and starting to look like an immediate future, do they have planned for us?
Whoa, that's a loaded question.
Yeah.
Let me start by framing the whole thing with a book that many readers may have already seen called Brave New World. It was written in 1932 by Aldous Huxley, and it was a very odd science fiction-y type of a book about a society that had no government, but everything was run by people, just the unnamed operators of the system, right? And it was very utopian-like. In other words, you just did what everybody else did, and if you deviated from it, you'd be punished or cut off or whatever. It was a scientific dictatorship, pure and simple. That book was written by Aldous Huxley in 1932, as I said, the same year that Technocracy Incorporated or Technocracy, the concept, was born at Columbia University in New York City. And at that time in the Great Depression, these scientists and engineers at Columbia, which is the most progressive university in the country at the time, they decided that it was up to them somehow to create a brand new economic model that was nothing like the price-based economic model or the free market economic model. And they called it a technocracy. It was to be a resource-based economic system. In other words, they would control the resources and dole them out to the economic system. They would control the energy so that they could control the economic output and the consumption level. And they believed so strongly that their system of micromanagement and scientific control would work that they said, you really won't need a political system where the people have anything to say because we're right. You know, we have the truth. So what's to discuss? And they actually called on FDR in 1933 to declare himself dictator when he got in to be president, so that he could just implement technocracy straight off. And one of the first things they said to do was to dismiss Congress. Now, I know that people are going to hear this and say, oh, that's crazy talk. Crazy talk it is, but it's true. And it's a historical fact that they did this. I've seen the papers. In fact, you can go online and search for the Technocracy Study Course, and you'll find the Bible of Technocracy, scanned version. You can read it for yourself. But this ideology, this system, didn't really gain traction in the 30s and the 40s. And finally, when the economy started to recover, it kind of fell away from the public view. But not before there were over 500,000 card-carrying members, dues-paying members, I might add, to Technocracy Incorporated. It was really big in Canada and all the provinces in Canada. I'll say in passing that the grand leader in Canada, his name was Dr. Joshua Haldeman. He was in charge of all the various provinces. There was a leader in each province, but he was like the head, the grand poobah, so to speak. Joshua Haldeman turned out to be the grandfather of Elon Musk, you see. Wow. So this leads us into the modern frame now. Okay, what is technocracy and how is it affecting us today? You can look at somebody like an Elon Musk, for example, who was raised in a thoroughly technocracy-saturated home and get an idea of where these people would like to take you. Now, Elon's biggest dream right now is to colonize Mars.
Yep.
He wants to send rocket ships and build cities up there. And of course, you're going to have a constitutional republic on Mars, right? No. You'll have a technocracy government where the government rules all the resources and tells you what you can and can't do, right down to the last little detail of your life. It's okay. Well, Elon Musk is followed, of course, by many other prominent big tech companies at this point, like Amazon with Jeff Bezos and Tim Cook at Apple and Eric Schmidt, the former president and chairman of Google. These people are through and through sold out to technocracy. And I might add and expand that, so is Klaus Schwab at the World Economic Forum, who's preaching the Great Reset right now.
Right.
That's technocracy from the 1930s, just warmed over, repackaged, warmed over. New marketing names, yep, call it the green economy, you can call it natural capitalism, you can call it the Green New Deal if you want. There's all kinds of different names that have been used for marketing. But when you look under you lift the hood and you look at the engine, it's the same thing that we had back then.
Now, speaking of Musk, not only is he keen on colonizing Mars, he seems to think that this transhumanist idea is kind of a fait accompli, like it's just going to happen. There's no way to stop it. That's sort of the way he talks.
Yes, you're right. And this brings up a good point. Transhumanism and technocracy are very closely related. I've often called them Siamese twins joined at the hip. They're both based on a rather evil, I think personally evil, religious proposition called scientism, which kind of elevates science up to be God, and the engineers and scientists are the priest of that God, who listen to the oracle on high and come down and tell us mere mortals what it means. If it means you wear a mask, or maybe you wear two masks, scientists will tell you that, the science, the oracle of science says, now you got to wear three masks or whatever, and you have to do it just because. Well, this is this is the connection between transhumanism, which adherents propose to escape death ultimately and to become immortal, and technocracy, which intends to reform society. And I look at it this way, after thinking about this for a long, long time, technocracy is to society what transhumanism is to the people who would live in that society. So they figure this, they see this dovetail coming, where when the Great Reset happens, at the same time, technology will be introduced into the human condition to prepare humans to live in that technocracy. That makes sense?
Yes. Now, why wouldn't a rational person immediately hear this and say, it's never been to our advantage to put total power into the hands of a small oligarchy. Are they selling this idea effectively to anybody, or are people just not listening? Hey, we're going to give all our power to a small oligarchy. They're not going to let you have a say in anything. And don't worry, we will not abuse our power. I mean, this sounds incredible.
It really does. And people have been asleep at the switch on this for a very long time. Of course, there's the aspect of the dumbing down of America. Education system has just gone to seed, at least in America. Critical thinking is not taught anymore virtually anywhere that I know of. So people don't have the reasoning skills to see through this stuff. But the World Economic Forum posted a video last year. It was a real pretty young, I forget if it was Danish or from the Netherlands or whatever, very pretty girl standing on outside of her townhouse or apartment, whatever. And she stands up and she says, I own nothing and I'm happiest I've ever been. Ha! You may have seen that. Yeah. And she'd go on to say, well, I can rent clothes when I want to go out and, I turn it back and they take care of it. And I can, if I want to get a cast iron pot for a recipe, I just order it up and it comes to my door and they take it away the next morning dirty and they clean it and I just pay a small fee. And I'm so happy I own nothing because I'm just so free and footloose, right? Well, here's the question. If this is the video that it just sounds so good. You just want to hop right into the screen and be part of that utopia. But here's the problem. Who owns the stuff that they're renting to you?
Yeah, it's like ownership, not for me, but ownership for them. Why can't they also be happy with nothing? It's like the party apparatchiks are not on our level.
Yeah, I know, you're exactly right. But see, people don't even put that simple little thing together. Well, who does own it? Somebody's getting the money, the revenue stream from it. And that means that if everybody owns nothing and they're happy, that means the people who are on the other side of that transaction own everything. Yes. Everything. And that is exactly where this thing is headed. That's what they're after. Owning and controlling all the resources of the world and denying you and I access to it.
Look how Bill Gates, while the middle class is being gut punched and declining and on a track to disappearing, and then we're all going to be dependent on our guaranteed income, our basic income, he's gobbling up land. He's become the biggest landowner in America. Isn't it obvious to people? And this Bezos, all the rest of the billionaires who are making billions off the COVID pandemic reaction, can't people see this going on?
They can't. They just don't put two and two together. Now, I will say, though, and just in defense of those who still have a rational cell in their brain, there are a lot of people that have woken up this last year to what's going on. A lot of people. Yep. What they're going to do with that yet is still unknown. Will they, really get active in their local communities, really do something about it? Or will they just sit back and say, it's too late, can't do it, I give up and roll over? We don't know yet. But there have been a lot of people that have woken up to it. I can testify to that just from my own book sales, for instance, have gone up as a result. Traffic on our website, Technocracy News, has gone up. Our other nonprofit website, citizensforfreespeech.org, has also had an increase in membership and site traffic as well.
Yeah. Going back to Elon Musk and his dreams about establishing his own technocracy up in Mars, we might not have to wait that long. Did you hear about I think it was the Nevada governor who was going to sign off on big tech being able to put up X billions of dollars to buy pieces of land in Nevada where they would set up a smart city? Have you heard about this?
Yes, I have. And that's a deep scheme, by the way, that they've been working on for a long time. But the benefit and the idea of big tech doing this is they will create their city, their quote unquote smart city. And they reserve the right to provide their own government.
Yeah.
not subject to county or anybody else or to the state. They will make their own government. Now, let's just not call it government. A smart city is not predicated on citizen involvement. A smart city is predicated on the science that runs the system, the society. And so artificial intelligence will be the government, if you will. And whatever policies are set in place, if you break them, you'll get a notice like you do on Facebook right now. You have violated the user community policies. You are banned for 2 weeks or 6 months or permanently, you see. So there will be no democracy. There will be no socialism. There's certainly no socialism because the Elon Musk of the world are hardly socialists. So yeah, they'll control everything. It'll be a nightmare for the people that live in it ultimately, unless they're just completely absorbed, like like somebody that went into the Borg during the old Star Trek series.
Right.
Where the Borg said, "We will assimilate."
Yes.
And that might happen.
You say that Musk and his ilk are not socialists. Okay, we can call them technocrats, but I think we could also call them, if we go by the original Mussolini definition, they're fascists, correct? They're completely aligned with the idea of corporate and government melding to control society.
I think a lot of people have drawn that conclusion, by the way, and I'm not going to argue against it, but here's what I see happening right now. These technocrats have been parasites to government, sucking the lifeblood out of government. This has been happening all the way back to the early 70s when the Trilateral Commission was started. They used government for their own purposes. They weren't really interested, and they said this themselves openly, even in debates we had with them back in the early days. They said, we don't have interest in politics. We're economically, we're interested in economic things. The only reason they got into government at all was to manipulate the system for their benefit and to perpetuate their progeny, if you will, okay? And this has been happening ever since. The question now is, I think today is, who's running the show? Is it these big tech companies, or is it the government? Is the government using big tech, or is big tech using government? It makes a big difference. Personally, I see big tech now being on top by far all around the world. And if that's true, then when technocracy survives and takes over, the governments of the world are going to be thrown under the bus, period. And they'll just disappear. It's interesting, this competition between technocracy and government. You can imagine this. Vladimir Putin was the first national leader to bring up that point, that they're coming for his job. Now, he's pretty sensitive to people with their claws out coming for him, right? He's been around a while. And he brought this up, and I said, man, he ought to tell some of the other national leaders of the world what he's picked up on. They're coming, eventually I think they're going to throw all the governments under the bus. Now, back in the early days when technocracy was created, I'll just say it again, they hated politicians with a passion. They thought they were the cause for everything that was wrong in the world. And so they had no problem throwing them under the bus. They said, these guys are useless anyway. Just fire them and send them home. We can do better than that. And thank goodness, President Roosevelt didn't take them up on the offer. We only got the New Deal out of it instead of technocracy.
When you mentioned that the technocrats were approaching Roosevelt, trying to get him to declare himself a dictator, the first thing that came to my mind was, I guess this is not the same incident, right? This was a few years before when they went to General Smedley Butler and asked him to march on Washington and do the same thing, right? Yeah. Were these the technocrats asking him?
Yeah, they hated government. They just really hated government. But they, on the other hand, they felt that by the time Columbia University got a hold of it, that was in 1932, it was the worst part of the Depression. They believed at that point that capitalism was actually dead, that the whole system was going to decay and just disintegrate. That's what they thought. And that's how they framed everything that they did, was that, well, it's gone anyway. We don't even need to push it at this point. But Roosevelt, being the progressive liberal that he was, might be persuaded to just, and I might say a megalomaniac as well, might be persuaded to declare himself dictator. It will support him. And we could turn the country around and run it like an efficient machine, and everything will be fine. Just imagine, speaking of efficient machine, take Amazon, for instance. Amazon warehouses that process all the packages you get in the mail or get in the truck. Amazon warehouse is now so efficient. They have robots that put things around. They have clocks or cameras that watch your every move. You grab this, you grab that, you shrink wrap this way or whatever. And the poor people that work at Amazon warehouses are so stressed out from being watched all day and afraid to do anything out of the ordinary that some are even carrying bottles to work to urinate in because the bathroom is too far away, and they'll get a ding on their resume, on their, scorecard or whatever. Now, this is the way Jeff Bezos, a technocrat, runs a company. Is this the way we want America to be run? Or Canada? Or any other country do you think there's a group of citizens anywhere in the world that would say, oh, we want to be just like an Amazon warehouse? I don't think so. But this is the mindset these people have. Society is just a machine. It's just full of assets, capital human assets, and we're going to manage it, maximize efficiency. We're going to take all the starch out of it, make sure everybody's lined up in a row. If a nail stands up, we're going to pound it back down. This is dystopia.
Yes, and not only that, right? Not only that, also the idea that power is shared by everyone and that people have any say in this. I mean, if you look at the great history of mankind and even prehistory of mankind, that's actually an unusual situation where your average citizen has any power. What do you think of the kind of conspiratorial idea that since the Magna Carta, or since Greece even, any attempt to give power to the people has been opposed by this cadre, this small group, and every time we get a little closer to freedom, let's say start with the Magna Carta and then the English Constitution and then the American Revolution, it burns them and they want to turn it around.
Yes. And they have, by and large, still controlled the narrative ever since. I mean, go back to 1900 and trace it forward from there. They've been controlling the narrative in World War I, World War II, and lots of other, events around the world.
Yeah.
And they're still manipulating today. Well, whether or not the people will ever be able to see through the propaganda to discern the truth is, who knows? Maybe they will, maybe they won't.
Right.
But if enough do, it will raise big problems with these technocrats around the world. Big problems. They're scared to death, by the way, of the populist party right now, everywhere. They're in Germany. There's a populist movement. In France, there's a populist movement. In Great Britain, there's a populist movement. In many other European countries, same thing. And America, especially big and strong populist movement because of freedom and liberty that we enjoy in the Constitution. And we collectively, the populist movement is not a political party, of course, but the movement is the greatest threat, the greatest perceived threat that technocrats have. And they are doing anything and everything to censor into oblivion and prevent communication from taking place within the populist movement. They want to kill it. So anything that comes out of the populist movement that defies their narrative, they cancel it on the spot. They either throw you out of social networks, or they drop you out of the Google search engines, or Amazon drops your books off the shelf
Yes.
in their stores, Or PayPal, not PayPal, but Patreon, the support community, throws you out the back door and says you can't use Patreon anymore, and say so long to all your supporters. It's the last time you'll ever see them.
Yeah, and you mentioned Amazon and banning books. You know, there are so many things that as little as 10 years ago, we had something in common. You could get bipartisan support on different issues with your neighbor down the road who happens to be, maybe you're Republican, he's a Democrat, but there were certain core things we all agreed on, and one was free speech. And if Amazon said in 1999, by the way, we'll select what books can come on here and we're going to ban some books, at that point, people would have risen up. And so, but they've got us so divided, whether it's we're divided on the COVID or Trump derangement syndrome or something, we all have to, we paint the adversary in a box and say, well, if he's in this group, we can't talk about anything. And it's almost like there's no issues we can discuss now. And talking about a populist uprising with no political party, in France, it looked like the yellow vest thing was a huge populist movement, really gaining traction, and the COVID thing came along and shut that one down pretty quick.
Pretty quick.
So what do you do to, let's say you're speaking to someone and you're talking about something that we should agree with, like free speech. And what do you do with someone you say, well, do you believe in free speech? And they're, of course I do. But then you get the caveats. You get, but not hate speech, and not speech that makes people uncomfortable, and not speech that's against the medical establishment. How can we show those people that, well, now you've just told me you don't support free speech?
Well, basically what you just said, but you can't put conditions on it. Actually, the only condition you can put on speech is the law. If you break a law or whatever it might be, because you're saying something that harms another person, for instance, libel or slander, those things are protected. You're protected by law on those issues. If you say something to threaten another person with bodily harm, there's laws on the books for that. You can't do that. But the question comes up, I suppose, when you just look at your argument just in itself. So who decides what's hate speech? The fact checkers? Who? Who decides what's uncomfortable to some other group?
Right.
And they just picked out, I know, they just picked up on Dr. Seuss, right? Dr. Seuss books have been dropped from everywhere. They're not, you can't even get them on eBay anymore. You can't get them on Amazon. They dropped them all together. And incredible. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Dr. Seuss? Who cares about Dr. Seuss, you know? But the fact checkers, they said, oh, racist book. Oh, man, get rid of that. And you know what? Yeah, let's get rid of it. They all got rid of it. You see, the problem with other people deciding what is right or wrong in speech, that's the dangerous part.
Right. Well, I want to get to your free speech organization that you've talked about. But before we do that, quickly back to Putin. He's kind of an enigma to me. It looks like there's a little pushback from him against this technocracy. I'm not sure whether he's sort of on the people's side or not. Would you say, I mean, there's these international confabs, there's the Trilateral Commission, there's the CFR, the Davos people.
Yeah.
So if he's not in that group, who else isn't? Because it seems like just about all the other presidents in the world are.
They are, and I'm not even suggesting that Putin is for the people. I don't. You could throw that out.
Right.
I just made the observation because of what he said that he sees this group coming for his authority.
Yeah.
He doesn't like that. He says, in other words, I'm the kingpin here.
Right.
You ain't encroaching on my territory.
Yes.
Sort of thing.
Right.
And where he goes with that, who knows? But, you know, I mean, he's picked up on it. And this is what other national leaders just don't get. You know, you look at it this way. You got Congress, the Senate calls all the big tech people to come in. And they beat them up, Ted Cruz rails on them and they whatever and make them kind of, browbeat them down. Oh, yes, sir, we'll be better next year. And
Nothing happened.
We'll get back to you with that data that you want. And,
Yep.
And they walk out of this meeting, where these in the front of the whole world, and they walk out of the room and they go, glad that's over. And life goes on. And 6 months later, they're doing the same thing they got chastised for, and even more so.
Yes. Meanwhile, they're probably having bacchanalian soirees together after the
yes.
after the meeting.
Yes.
Oh, man. Well, let's finish up on a positive point. You have a new free speech organization, because we know that the way we have to fight is with information, and the information has to get out there. Our organization has had our YouTube accounts deleted. Luckily, we're still getting tons of traffic on our own website, but we're looking for more ways to get the word out. Tell us about your organization.
Well, Citizens for Free Speech was a necessity that I started in 2018 as a nonprofit organization when I discovered or observed that big tech was colluding together to silence people. Before that, it had just been singular, like Facebook would do something to somebody, but Twitter wouldn't, or Twitter would and Facebook wouldn't, so on. But I noticed very distinctly in 2017 that there was this collusion going on where somebody would get hammered on one platform one day, the next day somewhere another one, and the next day another one, until they're thoroughly punished and frozen out of the whole system. I said, man, we're in trouble. We're in big, big trouble right there. And that's why I started Citizens for Free Speech. And I want to say, Citizens for Free Speech is an organization that should not have to exist in America. But it does, because it's a necessity at this point. The First Amendment is under the worst, most egregious attack that has ever been under in the history of our country. And if we allow the attackers to destroy the First Amendment in all of its 5 freedoms that it offers, the rest of the Constitution will be null and void. It'll just be crumble. It'll just crack and disappear. Of course, that's what the enemy wants. That's what the globalist enemy wants. They want to get rid of our Constitution. They want to get rid of the populist movement. They want to get rid of American liberty and freedom, all that nonsense. And if they can, take away all the guns so we don't come after them someday. Good luck with that.
Yes.
But this is where this whole censorship thing is going. When COVID hit last year, I'll tell you what, our Citizens for Free Speech just went nuts. People got it. A lot of people got it. I wouldn't say everybody did. A lot of people got it. That this whole great panic of 2020 was not really about the virus. It was about killing the First Amendment and the economy along with it, because that's important to technocrats, is to kill the economic system so that technocracy can rise out of the ashes. But it was a directed attack on the First Amendment on all levels. Churches, all of a sudden, were told how to worship. Oh, you can't sing. You can't, your instrument players have to stand 6 feet apart on stage, and they only got 12 feet on the stage to stand on. Oh, you can't have more than 25 people in your church at the same time. This is absolutely absurd, and it's a direct attack on freedom of worship, for sure. Freedom of speech. How can you talk when you're muzzled, when you're wearing a face diaper? That doesn't make any sense at all. The right to freedom of the press, censorship, yeah, everywhere. People are being dropped out completely. And what about the right to assemble peaceably? Can anybody really assemble when the governor or somebody or mayor, whatever, says you can't have more than 25 people at a time in the room? Well, that's no assembly. And they give lip service to, well, we're not violating Constitution or First Amendment. That's still in effect, but it's not in effect if you're limiting the number of people that can gather anywhere. And then you talk about the 5th one, the right to the freedom to redress government for grievances. Are you kidding? There was a time during all the lockdowns across America, all the government offices were closed. The door was shut, locked, whatever, the lights were off. you couldn't even reach anybody to talk to anybody in government. When you did, they did not want to listen to you at all. So, you just look at the whole thing and say, wow, all 5 points at the same time. Isn't that a little bit beyond coincidence? Yeah, it is. So this is why we're fighting for our lives right now, to restore the person's ability and right to exercise their First Amendment rights. We're involved in training people on how to engage in civil discourse. We're giving people resources and encouragement and mentoring and strategies and so on to work in their local communities to drive this stuff out from the ground up. That's the only way it's going to happen. It has to start at the root, the ground level, and go up from there, but it starts with your own community that you live in.
Yes. I've talked about this with a lot of people, and it looks like change probably won't work on a national political level, and it has to start with your own community. How do people get access? How do people access Citizens for Free Speech? Do they go to the Tech News and Trends website, or is there a separate?
Actually, you can just go directly to citizensforfreespeech.org.
Okay.
No, not the number 4, but spelled out. .org, and you can join. It's free to join because free speech should be free, even though it costs somebody a lot to make sure we have free speech. But I'll tell you, I've issued a call, and I continue to issue a call to every single American, and we've got a lot of foreign people from Canada and from Europe as well that join just to watch what's going on. We encourage everybody to put their name on the line and stand with us. If you want to go deeper, you can join our volunteer program, and we'll give you all kinds of good stuff and coaching, whatever, so you can be active in your local community. But we need people to stand with us. Our membership now, by the way, is up just upwards now of 30,000. We're growing like crazy, and I expect by the end of this year we might well have 50,000. So we're going to become a force to be reckoned with before it's all done.
That sounds fantastic. Well, I encourage all KLA listeners to access that and join up. So I'm glad we ended on a positive note here. Mr. Wood, thank you very much for coming with us today.
My pleasure. Glad it worked out.
Excellent. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.